Back at the desk with the season officially over, especially your championship fantasy football games. It's time to do a fantasy football recap. Let's start out with who, in your opinion, Marvin, was the MVP of this fantasy football season.
You know what? I think you can go a lot of different directions in this MVP race. But there are a lot of different people that I want to throw out there that deserve MVP voting. Starting with the running backs, because running backs tend to be the most, tend to be the position that gets the most points, typically in most leagues. You have to go with DeMarco and Le'Veon.
Oh, absolutely.
For the position that they were drafted, most people drafted DeMarco and Le'Veon either in the second or third round. And if you were able to get both of them and ride that wave, you probably won the championship this league. QB, I have to go to my man, that bad man that he is up in Green Bay. I'm talking about Aaron Rodgers. I think he is the quarterback MVP. I was going to go with Andrew Luck, but somebody laid a goose egg on this past Sunday, so that dropped him out. I'm definitely going with Rodgers. And for the receivers, I go with the X-Man Dez and somebody that flew underneath the radar that still put up big numbers, Emmanuel Sanders. Emmanuel Sanders put up big numbers for the way where he was drafted, the amount of points that he put up. He put up 2 more touchdowns yesterday. I think Emmanuel Sanders, but the overall MVP, I still have to go with DeMarco. The way that he has carried the Cowboys on his back, it has to be DeMarco. It has to be DeMarco Murray at this point.
I mean, you throw out some really good options, obviously. Let's shoot down some of your quarterbacks. Obviously, Andrew Luck put up a bunch of points. And you mentioned Aaron Rodgers, who also put up a bunch of points. Obviously, we know what Luck did. You know what? For a lot of people, Week 16 was their championship game, and I don't think A-Rod did quite enough necessarily.
I know he didn't do for me, but if Week 16 was a 0 for Luck.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
A 0.
So when I pick my MVPs, I'm gonna take into consideration the full season, your Heisel, who gave me consistent points along the way, and then most important, who delivered down the stretch. If we're talking playoffs, Aaron Rodgers probably didn't get you far enough in the playoffs with his game against the Bills. So I'm gonna stay with Russell Wilson, especially when it came down to it. He delivered against one of the best defenses in the NFL. I love DeMarco Murray. Had the injury, so I'm gonna move Le'Veon Bell to the top of my MVP running as far as running backs goes. And Antonio Brown, unbelievable. Especially you're talking about a PPR league. He was the man from week 1 through the end. I mean, but let's talk about who was the waiver wire pickup along the way. Some of you didn't necessarily draft, but you're able to steal, in those early goings.
3 people. C.J. Anderson.
Okay.
The running back out of Baltimore,
Justin Forsett.
Justin Forsett,
yes.
me. And the rookie of the year, OBJ, Odell Beckham Jr. The numbers that he put up after missing the first 4 weeks of the season,
insane.
I think those are definitely the consistent 3 waiver wire pickups. Ty?
Again, I agree. The number one being, yes, the rookie there. I like call him ODB. Because if you had him, they better have your money because you won. Exciting. Justin Forsett, again, put up some great numbers, and I got to drop him out because when it counted in the championship game, he wasn't able to deliver like these other players did.
That wasn't his fault.
I'm not saying it's his fault.
It's Flacco.
Hey, you got to take all these into account when you're playing fantasy.
Man.
You got to take all these into account.
Man.
But another name I like to say, Ryan Tannehill. This is a guy that you didn't need to draft. He was probably sitting, in free agency, especially depending on how many people were inside your fantasy league. But again, throughout the season, quite a bit of highs, not too many lows, not too many overall bad games. But when the championship came, week 16, in most leagues, week 17 being that they sit players, he delivered again 4 touchdowns against the Minnesota Vikings.
Hide your horn campaign.
Yes, hide your horn. Let's move on. Sleeper picks.
I have 1 sleeper pick.
Okay.
when you talk about a position that doesn't have a lot of intel, you talk about the tight ends. You have Gronk. Gronk put up a good season.
Very good season.
Jimmy Graham was, Julius Thomas kind of got hurt. Vernon Davis and Ty will illustrate a little bit more about that. But my sleeper pick, Greg Olsen.
Okay.
Greg Olsen put up a very good season this year for Carolina to lose a lot of their weapons and Cam Newton being hurt. Greg Olsen. I like what Greg Olsen did this past year.
Love it. I love it. I kind of consider Gronk a bit of a sleeper pick. Is that weird? I think a lot of people passed on him because of his injury history. And when the second the Patriots really got him involved in the offense, not only did that team take off, but his numbers took off. Wanted to say Fred Jackson, but he was hurt for a while. So let's say Golden Tate. His numbers assisted with the loss of Megatron for all those weeks that he was Stafford's number one, and he put up receptions. He got the end zone, made a lot of big plays. I mean, let's move on to disappointments. You talked about Vernon Davis, disappointment. Jimmy Graham, disappointment. Had him on both my teams, wasn't enough. Another player had both my teams. Percy Harvin and Reggie Bush. Bush virtually missed the whole game, about 70 points the whole season, and I appreciate it, man. Not really.
Also, I have to throw in there Andy Dalton and Frank Gore, too, as well.
Yes.
Just to finish it up as the disappointment.
You know, that whole 49ers offense, disappointing.
Yeah, very much so. Very, very, very much so. So.